Being able to detach the camera from the player character and take it anywhere you want beyond the playable limits to see exactly how developers stitched together levels and what interesting techniques they used in order to do so. To see parts of the level that the player was never intended to see, and to see parts of these areas from completely new perspectives. This has always been something that's really curious and quite interesting to me. We've done it quite a bit for a lot of the Kingdom Hearts games, but one we haven't checked out is 0.2 Birth by Sleep. This is because up until recently, 0.2 doesn't have a free cam mod, so I actually had to ask some of the members of the Kingdom Hearts mod community to see if it was possible for them to put one of these together. I have to say big thanks to Darlin, who got in contact with Yuri for me, who's known for a lot of Kingdom Hearts 3 mods, specifically the KH3 mod loader. He ended up creating a free cam mod for me here in 0.2 so that we could check out the game from completely new perspectives. Now there's a specific reason as to why I wanted to do this, but we'll come back to that soon. The first thing we should take a look at is 0.2's main menu. This is actually completely different compared to any other Kingdom Hearts menu, as it doesn't just use a single piece of art or an image. It rather uses a 3D model of Aqua and some sparkle effects with an image in the background, and detaching the camera, we can see how Square Enix pulled this effect off. While I much prefer the Tetsuya Nomura artwork for Kingdom Hearts' main menus, it's cool to see them at least attempt something a little bit different here in 0.2. The very beginning of the game has Aqua following a trail through a forest, making her way towards the Castle of Dreams. I was interested to see how big this level instance is, because you can tell the castle off in the distance is a 3D model, along with the forest itself seemingly being quite large, and the fact that this is actually separate to the Castle Town area. And it turns out it's pretty huge. Even though the playable space is just one straight path for the most part, there's actually a ton of geometry here that you would never see. Interestingly, to give the perspective that the castle is off in the distance, the playable instance of this level is on its own separate floating island. Even though the castle is so far off into the distance, it really is impressive how much detail still remains on its model. It's odd seeing all of these low poly trees surrounding the castle, but with the castle itself being of a much higher poly count. I'm guessing that the reason why the castle is of such high detail is because this model is also used once again in the Castle Town area, where we get close-ups of it during cutscenes. As the most detailed part of the castle is its clock tower portion, which we commonly get close-ups of as we activate the gears. Interesting though that Square Enix kept the exact same layout of the entrance courtyard area from how we see it when we visit the world in Birth by Sleep, even though from most angles you almost never see this front courtyard space. Something that's really cool while using a free cam in Unreal Engine games is it can actually be activated during cutscenes. Here's the cutscene that we see when the path to the castle crumbles. Now we can see it crumble from a different perspective. Now the catch to this is this can only be done for cutscenes that are playing in-engine and running in real time. A lot of the cutscenes throughout both 0.2 and Kingdom Hearts 3 are actually running in-engine, but some of them are either pre-rendered or pre-recorded. Unfortunately, the more interesting cutscenes where it would be cool to be able to control the camera to see what's going on are pre-recorded, like the Keyblade Graveyard cutscene that plays right at the start of the game, or the cutscene where Aqua, Mickey, and Riku close the door to darkness. Still though, it's really interesting to see these cutscenes being played out without the proper camera angles, to see what angles would be used with what animations. There's a lot of instances where things for character models are stretching, or characters are teleporting. You would never notice this, of course, when you watch the cutscene, because the camera's perspective comes across as real and convincing. 0.2 provided some really cool examples of what happens to worlds when they fall into the realm of darkness, and looking at Castle Town here with being able to take the camera back just gives us such a great idea as to how distorted and construed worlds become. The French-inspired village of Cinderella is no more than a crumbling island floating in a vast space of emptiness. A prominent detail throughout the Realm of Darkness are these blue crystals, which there is heavy use here in Castle Town. Some of the shapes of these even come across as looking like claws. My headcanon for this would be symbolizing that the world has fallen into the grasp of darkness. What I find interesting about this is the blue crystallization that's happening to the fragments of this world is very reminiscent to the blue crystal stasis that we see Yozora put Sora in during the bad ending of the Yozora fight. It could purely just be a design decision to make the crystals blue in order for them to stand out, but I can't help but think if the two are somehow the same and are connected. It's pretty cool just how much detail Square Enix put into all of the warped looking terrain surrounding the playable space. Personally, I think that this Castletown space here in 0.2 is one of the most beautiful looking areas we've had for a modern Kingdom Hearts game so far. For the world within Mirror area, it doesn't contain anything too interesting. A lot of these areas are very small, but I did find a couple of interesting things. Like this room, for example, is used for multiple instances. However, depending on what mirror you go into, something different will be happening in this room, and the props that are used for those different instances are hiding outside of the playable space, and depending on what mirror you enter into, those props that are positioned outside of the level are then put into the playable space. The hallway staircase level is one big area that is split between 4 separate staircases. So when entering into a mirror at the top of a staircase, you're teleported to another one. Also, the mirrors in this space are completely fake, and the stairs continue to ascend. I absolutely had to check out the pillar room, and although there isn't really anything too interesting going on here, it's definitely one of the most unique Kingdom Hearts environments we've seen, entering into the pillars in order to flip Aqua upside down to progress towards the end mirror. This entire level is one big collection of pillars in a square box, and it looks completely insane when you take the camera all the way out of the playable space. The Forest of Thorns is where things get quite interesting. This is the largest area in 0.2, and because of this, the level is actually loaded in 2 separate chunks. While you're in the first portion of the level, the second half of it is unloaded. However, some objects and interactables are still spawned in, like treasure chests, the save points, and even the phantoms of Terra and Ventus. But most notably, the large orb of darkness, or at least that's what I think this is, which is a prop used within the dark side fight at the end of the level. Strangely too, when you start panning around this orb, the skybox starts changing color. This is likely something to do with Unreal Engine, and I'm sure any UE experts here would probably know why this is happening. Something I was really curious to see was all of the dark sides that are positioned just outside of the path that will try to smack you as you run past them. You'll also have to avoid these guys during the rail segment. What's cool about these guys is they're programmed to always look towards Aqua, and even for some of the dark sides that are positioned throughout the rail segment, even if Aqua is nowhere close by, they'll still look in Aqua's direction. Most of these guys are actually clipping through the level's geometry, but you'd never notice this due to the smoke effect or passing by them too fast. 0.2's environments are just so unique, so rich with this almost airy charm to them. We're so used to exploring these colorful Disney worlds, and while Kingdom Hearts games have taken us to some pretty dark environment types, 0.2 is the absolute best execution of which so far. And speaking of airy dark environment types, welcome to Kingdom Hearts Hell. So circling back to why I wanted to make this video in the first place is due to a recent discovery from KeyCast, something that I have only just found out about now, and I'm sure that a lot of people also don't know about this. Did you know that the giant floating orange orb in the sky that the dark side will use during its fight as its DM attack sending down lasers is actually a giant floating eyeball? I had absolutely no idea about this, only because during the fight you're more so focused on the dark side and avoiding the satellite lasers that are being rained down upon you. You never really have much time to actually look up, but if you were to, during the activation of this DM, the orb turns into a giant blinking eye. This has got to be one of the most bizarre discoveries I think we've come across in Kingdom Hearts, because what is this thing? We haven't seen some kind of floating giant eyeball. This is kind of completely new. That being said though, it is quite reminiscent to the orbs that we see at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1 and during Terra's story in Birth by Sleep. The orbs of destruction, let's call them, that essentially nuke worlds, that swallow worlds and send them to the realm of darkness. They don't look exactly the same per se, but it is a giant floating orb of what is assumed to be darkness. The ones we see in Kingdom Hearts 1 and Birth by Sleep do have an almost orangey kind of coloration to them. So if the two are related, are they actual living entities of darkness similar to the Heartless that also reside within the realm of darkness? These things can actually be summoned by Keyblade wielders that have strong ties to the darkness. Xehanort actually summons the one that we see in Birth by Sleep to destroy the Land of Departure. One interesting detail that I did notice about this is in order for the orb to activate its eye form, it actually requires multiple dark sides to give it power. During the fight against the main dark side, all of the surrounding dark sides outside of the arena, and there is a lot of them, are constantly sending these orbs, maybe orbs of darkness, up into the bigger orb. Once the orb has harnessed enough power, the main dark side that you're fighting then performs what looks like almost a summoning activation ritual where 13 flames appear above that dark side, awakening the eye within the orb. Now in most video games, you would write this off as, oh okay, cool effects to add to the scene. But knowing that this is Tetsuya Nomura and Kingdom Hearts, there is generally always a bigger picture to smaller details like this. This got me thinking about the Eyes of Darkness that we see within multiple Keyblades throughout Kingdom Hearts. We don't really know too much about this still. It's one of the great Kingdom Hearts mysteries. We do know about at least one of these eyes, and that's the Eye of Darkness that can be seen within the Gazing Eye Keyblade, being that this is the Master of Masters eye used in order to write the Tome of Prophecies. But that still doesn't necessarily explain all of those other Keyblades that have the exact same eye in them. The eye that we're seeing here in 0.2 is some kind of Eye of Darkness, but whether or not it's the same or related to the eyes that we see within the Keyblades, who knows? Eyes of Darkness, though, most certainly make me think about those original 13 darknesses, the ones from ancient times that the Master of Masters despises so much. We still know very little about them, and it totally wouldn't surprise me if the eyes that are found within the Keyblades, and perhaps maybe related to this giant orb eyeball thing, possibly has something to do with them. It's a spitball theory for sure, but what's not to say that those original 13 darknesses also have the same ability of being able to put their eyes into Keyblades. One last interesting detail that I also noticed here was the spiky balls that rain down in this area that you have to avoid are the same spiky balls that we see Sora's rage form summon forth in Kingdom Hearts 3. While we don't need a raw confirmation, this tells us that Sora truly is tapping into some raw powers of darkness while using rage form. The final cavern area doesn't have anything too interesting outside of its playable space, but how Square Enix actually put this area together is quite interesting, being that this entire level almost looks like a giant sea slug. And lastly is the Destiny Islands arena. The cutscene that's happening just before the Demon Tide fight is running in engine, so we can get a free cam look at it.
It also must be where we'll find its counterpart. The Keyblade of Darkness has got to be here on the dark side of their world. We'll have to hurry. Come on!
It's also really neat to be able to get a closer look at the other surrounding crumbling islands next to the arena. There isn't anything too inherently interesting about these, but it goes to show the cool work that Square Enix put in to make a really good looking boss arena. One thing that I did notice though is the clouds that are off in the distance up in the skybox are actually 3D assets. So that's a look at 0.2 Birth by Sleep out of bounds. By far the most interesting thing here is the eye discovery by Keycast. I wanted to get a closer look at this, as it truly is one of the most bizarre findings in Kingdom Hearts. A big shout out to Darlin, Yuri, and Keycast. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Be sure to hit that like button, helps me out, as well as subscribing to the channel to keep up with everything going on here. Big shout out to my wonderful patrons. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and we'll talk again real soon.